Hello, my friends. Fast and Furious with all my videos lately. Today is the 8th of May 2025. I have just checked, and there is no decision uh, on the what's happening in Rome to elect the new pope. So I'm going to continue as much as I can. I will be posting a few more videos between today and tomorrow, hoping that I can do this before introducing the Cardinals who are voting there, in the hope that I can do this as many as possible, cover as many as possible before the new Pope is elected. This is not my own research. I am going to continue using, I'll put it here, if you remember, I'm following okay, can you see there? I'm following this program. I'm following Father Gabriel Calvo Sarauti, who contributes to this one particular channel called the Tecton Center, I believe. And he is interviewing, this is the priest, a very traditional Orthodox priest, a historian, theologian, excellent, excellent. And he is interviewing this lady who is I believe she's certainly an author. She's very experienced, wrote books. She's very experienced in all matters to do with the Vatican. Very experienced indeed. And she actually knows and has met most of the cardinals who will be voting there. Whenever she doesn't particularly know one, she will tell us, I don't know very much about him. What is happening is that in that presentation, in that show, the producer is just putting up pictures there, okay, of all the cardinals with no particular order. It's not that the traditionalists come first or last and the others first. He's just putting these pictures there, and she is commenting for about 1 or 2 minutes about each one, what she, in very, very, very general brush strokes, what they are like. She's not going into the too deeply into theology. She's just trying to give us a sense of the man himself. Okay, so because normally when I talk to you about a video which is in another language, I will say, look, just follow the auto translation because I checked it and it is pretty good in complete sentences and in, punctuation and everything else. When it is not tidied up, it is very difficult for anyone to read it. So that is when I go and listen to it and have to write it down and tidy it up and so on. Okay, so because the auto translation is not very good here, it would have been much easier for me to just leave it there, without having to do all that work beforehand. But the auto translation is not very good, so I'll have to I have been writing what she says about this one. In the previous video, 2 days ago, we covered 8 of them. Remember that the purpose is not to say who will be a good pope and who will be a bad pope. No, it's just to give you a sense of the people who are voting there. Okay, so in this video, then she starts talking about this cardinal from Brazil. Okay, his name is João Braz de Aviz. Okay, so she says, okay, very general. She never says terrible things about anybody, or but general. You have to hear between the lines, though. Okay, so very close to Francis, to Bergoglio. his personal life, his personal daily itinerary is most interesting, she says, because and what has happened to him, because when he was a priest, he suffered. He says he saw himself wrapped in a crossfire in Mexico, in the middle of a crossfire of bullets, in a shootout, right in the middle of it. And he got, this is this cardinal here, and he got 136 bullets went through him. 136. No, it was not shrapnel, there were bullets, and he survived. They call him the man of lead. There were actual bullets. It took a long time for him to recover. One of the bullets, you know how these things happen sometimes, one of the bullets didn't actually go through his heart because he had something there in his shirt pocket that prevented it. She thinks it was a pen, but perhaps not. She doesn't quite remember. In other words, something inside his shirt pocket deflected the bullet. She says, I don't know him personally. Just as a little bit of gossip, people used to say that he wore a toupee, but no, that is not true. There was a time when he looked like he was wearing one. Not that that is important, but people gossip, as you know. There was a time when he looked as if he was wearing one. But she says, in my opinion, actually, I think because of his health and all that, that it could have been, if he was wearing it, that it could have been more a matter of perhaps health or an illness or something like that, some health issue that he had to go through. But even that he did or he didn't wear it, it doesn't matter, is not an issue, and it's not an issue. But in any case, no, he's not wearing a toupee. Now it's his own hair. All right. He does inspire confidence, she says. When he was he's part of the Focolare movement. What is that? This is a new thing in the Catholic Church, perhaps not so new. It was founded originally in 1943. And in 1943, it was to promote unity and brotherhood under the rubric, may they all be one, etc., etc. The emphasis on mercy. But after the 60s, it has become something else. He was, first of all, he was a very much in agreement with liberation theology in Latin America. Okay. He left that movement because he said that he came to a point where he felt that he was losing his priestly vocation. So he left that. Part of this new Focolare movement. But after the 60s, you see, after Vatican II, with all the modernism and progressism, it has in a way become something else. Because the emphasis is on mercy. Oh, you know, like Bergoglio, everyone. You know, they'll tell you that, for example, well, Jesus ate with sinners and so on. Hold on. It's a difference here. They had repented first. Jesus saw the in their hearts that they were repenting of their sins, therefore forgiveness, therefore mercy. But you can't put the cart before the horse. Oh, no repentance. Here I am sinning, but of course you will forgive me, won't you? Because mercy. No, it doesn't work like that. And this is how it has been deformed. Yes, not understanding that repentance has to come first before forgiveness and mercy comes our way. Okay, he has been, okay, the prefect for the dicastery. Where did they get these names from? It was never, there was never such a thing as dicastery. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it properly. I don't know what it means. Anyway, this dicastery for the consecrated life, also for apostolic societies, the prefect for that particular office, until he was replaced not long ago by Bergoglio with a woman, Bambrilla, named by Bergoglio. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, here we go. Can I say this often enough? These women who always want to be there with the men, competing with men, fighting with men, always there, but never understanding that woman might have a different role. It doesn't mean that you're not going to contribute. You're going to contribute in a different way, contribute nevertheless. But no, they want to be there with the men, always busy bees, like parsley and cooking everywhere. You know what is going to happen when you get these busy bees there wanting to be like men. First of all, they're going to propose, and then they're going to compose and dispose, and then decompose. That's what's coming. Anyway, as prefect, oh, that was me, not the lady. Oh, sorry. Okay, now, as prefect, the lady continues, Paloma Girona. As prefect, he didn't necessarily do a bad job. He actually moved on to curtail a lot of weird movements that were there from the 90s. There was an excessive easiness at the time to approve just about every movement, okay? So there was an abuse of authority there, a misunderstanding about the meaning of obedience. And so they obviously, as it usually happens, for example, the Legionnaires of Christ, all these movements, and they, what happens to them? They become easy to become cults, just following the leader, forgetting. He wanted to leave the Curia at one point, but they actually asked him to. He was asked to stay, and he did. Convinced him. Okay. So this was this Cardinal João Braz the Aviz. Okay, Cardinal Dolan, very well known. He is from the United States. Okay, she doesn't say very much about him. Doctrine orthodox. He has a certain degree of charisma. It is said that he has a lot of influence in conservative circles. won't stop too much about him. Most people know about him. How about this one from Germany? Cardinal Reinhard Woelki. She says, to me, he's a kind of a hero, actually. He appears not to be very firm, very imposing in personality. But in my opinion, she says, is one of the few truly Catholic bishops, perhaps, she says that with a smile, left in Germany. He was bishop of Cologne. He's a very well-formed man theologically. And then she says, perhaps we don't quite realize in other countries the pressure that the priests in Germany are under, in a Germany that is, especially now with a very strong Protestant anti-Catholic culture. He had been the bishop of Berlin, then Cologne, and she says he's a good man. Of course, he was in a little bit of a bother there because the same thing that happens to many of them. They took out a media campaign to say, deal with the issue of sexual concealment. Okay. The fact is that he had inherited the problem. He was not there when it happened. But in any case, that doesn't matter at all. He is the guilty one, so he had to go through that time of trial and tribulation, as it were. He was not, because he was new, he was not very good at communication, at communicating his side of, not very good at communication. But in any case, already branded as covering up sexual abuse, that kind of thing. The whole thing, it was eventually realized that, so he's evolved, spoke openly. You remember during Bergoglio when the climate change thing was so strong with Bergoglio, he was practically saying every 5 minutes. Okay, he had the courage, one of the very few ones, not very many, of openly from the pulpit, calling it an ideology. This is this priest. And was he perhaps, if we want to read too much into it, was he perhaps positioning himself already at the time against the excesses of Bergoglio? Probably yes, but that took courage. If you remember my previous video about the terrorizing effect of saying something against him, Bergoglio, okay, you would be immediately gone. All right, so that's that one. Cardinal Reinhard Marx, okay, also from Germany. She just says a few sentences. A bureaucrat, a politician. He could have been a very successful bureaucrat in the European Union. He's in the Curia. That's it. Okay, let's move on to the next ones. Oh, I'm trying not to jump too much. Bear with me. Okay. The next four. Cardinal Willem Jacobus Eijk from Holland. All right, that's the one. Quite a few things about him. She says, in my opinion, he is a marvelous shepherd. Went on to reform the, well, if you can imagine that these countries, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, are very, very Protestant, okay? And the great majority of the people are Protestants anyway. And what happens here is that the priests there have to come up with this issue of mixed marriages. And in mixed marriages, you're going to have the next thing is this thing about intercommunion and the Eucharist and so on. They're very sensitive to that. So in one occasion, because of a document that came out from the Vatican with a statement by Bergoglio that was very confusing, not at all clear about whether to give communion to everyone, that kind of thing, confusing as usual. He actually wrote a letter, an article, saying that he was actually scandalized. He says, how is it possible? He couldn't believe it. How could it be possible that the Holy Father could have said that, what he said? Nevertheless, he is cautious, prudent, not controversial, but when he had to intervene in several issues, either in the Pontifical Academy or in the pro-life or in this particular situation, in this case of intercommunion, he speaks up then. He quoted the Catechism, Article 675 to 677, the official Catechism of the Catholic Church, that speaks of apostasy. Some, when it comes to doctrine, some see him as a possible, but who knows? Okay, he's a realist. He did great work actually in Holland. The Dutch Bishops' Conference has been completely renewed under him, one could say, back to orthodoxy and fidelity. It is certainly not what it was in the 70s and the 80s. And the conference, Dutch Bishops' Conference, consecrated the whole of Holland to the Sacred Heart of Mary. They have also published a whole educational catechesis for Catholics and for schools, okay? And he said that if a young man or woman was to go through the catechism and learn the faith, they would most probably be good, faithful Catholics. She sees him as reliable, orthodox in doctrines. Some people call him traditional, up to what point, I don't know. She says he is really a wonderful shepherd. His episcopal motto was something like, she says, I don't remember exactly verbatim, but something like work without rest or something like that. Something along those lines. When he was young, he had a stroke. He was very seriously ill, and he was only 48. He is actually a medical doctor by profession. He was a late vocation, and she finds that he is actually, quite good as a cardinal. All right. So then she goes on to Cardinal Cleemis Thottunkal. Where is he? Yes, this one. Okay. From India. Interesting stories here. He is from the, I hope I'm not mispronouncing this, from the Syro-Malankar. Right. What does that mean? The Eastern Catholic churches in India. There are two. The other one is the Syro-Malabar Church. They have the East Syriac Rite liturgy. It is a kind of a new church. It was founded in 1935. I'll explain what that means. Okay, originally in 1935, it had 5 members. They actually called it the Church of the Loaves and the Fishes. But one bishop asked Rome if Rome would recognize them as being part of the fidelity to Rome. And they were, because they separated from the Orthodox Church, and they asked Rome to officially recognize them, and Rome did. And there were 5 people to begin with: 1 bishop, 2 or 3 priests, and 2 laymen there. Today, there are more than 500,000 people in different parts of the world. Paloma says he's really fabulous. He speaks very, very slowly, very, very slowly, quietly. He's a wise man. During the Synod of the Family, Bergoglio's Synod, in 2014, he signed, together with another 11 cardinals, they wrote a book or a booklet contrasting what had been said in that synod and contrasting it with, which then went on to that infamous Amoris Laetitia. And together with others, Cardinal Eijk and Cardinal Cleemis and Robert Sarah and Cardinal Sen from China, they wrote this, and a few others wrote a book where they put together Catholic doctrine always taught by the magisterium on family and family matters. And they contrasted it with what was coming out of that synod. There are communities of this Syro-Malankar church in areas like Saudi Arabia, parts of some Muslim countries, where in many cases are truly, truly persecuted. All right. But they are there, aren't they? So this is quite admirable. This is the Cardinal. Of course, Cardinal Müller. Gerhard Ludwig Müller. Everyone knows Cardinal Müller. Was prefect of the doctrine of the faith. He was bishop of Ratzingsburg, a true reformer. He got there and found, when he got there, he found an absolute mess in every area, an anarchic mess. She says, a place where everybody was more chiefs than Indians, so to speak. Okay, everyone was a chief there. And where the priests were practically buried. No one was taking any notice of them. Anyway, he simply said, to begin with, here we are going to apply the code of canon law. Benedict XVI was glad about it, applauded him. He's a great reformer. He's a good shepherd, she says. Sometimes he's been criticized because he had originally, a long time ago, been a friend of Gustavo Gutierrez, who was the leader of the liberation theology movement, but never, I mean, he remained a friend, but he wanted to try someone, he tried to, in his attitude was to actually teach someone who was suffering from theological deformation, but continued to be friendly. They remained friends, even though he opposed this Gutierrez liberation theology guy. Actually, not only did he not become one, but he is practically the contrary. He has stood out in the last few years by showing firm opposition to the pontificate, to Bergoglio, to the pontificate of Bergoglio. Everybody knows him. And then last, that Tagle, got away with myself there. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines. Again, the media is putting him there as a possible. We don't understand why, but in any case, what I see here, she says, I have the impression that actually the Curia, the P2, the propaganda due too, they are inserted in the Curia. She says, have been gnawing at him, have eaten away at him. Some issues have come out. He was president of Caritas International, which was under the dicastery of evangelization. About 2 or 3 years ago, the whole upper structure of that was renewed or removed, okay? That is when he arrived, okay? He had just arrived, and then the whole of the upper crust was removed, but he was left there. He tends to draw a lot of attention. I mentioned him in another video about the fact that there he was singing Imagine there is no heaven, imagine there is no heaven and no religion too, bad grammar included. What are you doing there? Okay, so is he, I have a problem with those who seek the applause of the world, okay? I have a problem with me personally, not the lady. I have a problem with those who want to become part of the world instead of leading the world. They want to be liked by the world. Personally, I have seen a few things of him, and he's not firm, I don't think. My own interpretation. The media likes him a lot. I don't know, it's one of those people who smile too much, when perhaps he should be in cases where perhaps more firmness is the way to go. What else does she says about him? He's affable, yeah. He was a teacher, theologian, in some instances, he has been critical of Vatican II, but it's all very, very diffused. I think personally, having seen a few things, I think he's easily flexible. Okay. Not a leader, perhaps charismatic in the sense that he smiles and people like him and he's affable, but that is not what we need at the moment. Perhaps it would be better if they go back, the next pope, go back to not being so much of a pop star. Okay, we need a little bit of going back to normal, and the role of the Pope is to guide. It is to protect doctrine. Yeah, is all that. Is not to be there giving interviews as if you were a politician running for office. Okay, these other 8, and I will leave it here. And later today, I will post another one with another 8, and hopefully, I'll get through quite a few before they come to a decision. Thank you again for listening, and goodbye.